No.
Here we go.
I actually have to put my travel approval in first and get Louis to approve it, or whoever it is that approves it. Is it you, Louis, or is it James?
We don't care about any of this, Chris.
Oh, sorry. I didn't even notice it had gone live.
Don't you get the ding 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 stuff? Is it only me getting this?
Only you get the ding ding ding. It just goes live.
All right, there you go. It's
live.
All right. All right, crap. So I
Happy
guess...
New Year, everyone. And it's been a long time, I believe. Happy.
Yeah, it's been a month at least.
3 weeks, actually.
3 weeks? Okay.
All right, so here we are. Some people made progress during the holiday period. Isn't that awesome?
That makes the rest of us look bad.
Right. So, all right. So, Clifford had something for us to discuss.
Oh, yes.
I didn't read everything. I read a little bit of it, and now I realize I want to see the test code because I'm confused. But I guess you can introduce all the issues to us all.
My basic take on this is that presently, out of some of the tests with some of the conditions, and the driver is the store throws a cache access exception and kicks off a sequence of events.
Just before, for potential watchers, can you set the stage a bit more?
Let's see. What can I? Should I show the?
I think maybe you could show well, just at least saying that it's in the context of the bulk operations. When we have a loader and a writer,
Yeah, in context of put all, where we have a store implementation and a cache writer implementation plugged in, and the store implementation throws a cache access exception at some point in time during the bulk operation. That causes Ehcache to enter into its exception handling for the cache access exception, and the results that you get out of it are, in my mind, inconsistent with what a consumer of the Ehcache put all operation might expect.
Okay, so you said whenever the store throws an exception, though there are basically two important points in times where it may throw an exception, i.e.
The test cases handle, or the test cases introduce the exception on the first call to store bulk compute.
Right, but that's not what I meant.
Okay.
I guess what I mean is the fact that now there are multiple calls just happens to be the case because of the current store implementation you're using underneath.
The multiple calls to
the bulk thing the method you just mentioned.
Yeah, there are multiple. There's actually the bulk store only gets a single call. Excuse me, bulk compute in store only gets a single call right now.
And that calls back multiple times in the function, and that's the implementation Alex is referring to.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess what I want to argue on the basic, to me, there are 2 points, right? Either while we're trying to do whatever we need to do in order to invoke the function, prior to that or after that, right? There are basically those 2 points in times where fundamentally this operation can fail at the store level, i.e. trying to get whatever provides the isolation in order to do the in order to do the write, or after that. I think in both cases...
This condition occurs in either of those circumstances. There's one more thing that has to happen, and that is the writer, the cache writer, has to throw an exception other than the bulk cache writer exception.
No, wait a sec. What are we talking about the cache writer? So are we talking about double failure right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So we're saying we're trying to write to the store, that doesn't work out, and we're trying to write to the system of record, and that doesn't work out neither.
Correct.
Yes.
At least in part.
Okay.
Right. And what happens? What happens is that it is possible for the caller of Ehcache put all winds up getting a bulk cache writer exception out of that.
Right. But wait, Clifford.
Okay.
Wait, I really need to understand. All of a sudden you jump like all the way. I understand from a user perspective that sounds all good and whatnot, but I need to understand more because I'm rewinding everything in my head slowly.
Okay.
What is the it's a put all, so it's a mutative operation. Some keys we can't even access, right? So I guess what we'll do in that case is we'll try to invoke the writer, and then we'll try to remove the mapping for that given key that we hopefully successfully wrote to the underlying system of record from the cache. Or what is exactly going on here? Because we're talking about a double failure, it makes it like very, very complex.
Yes,
so I'm not surprised that it's broken. But I even want to settle on what we want, what we're discussing, and what is the outcome that we.
I would read the processing summary for the first description in that.
The first two items there have detailed processing summaries.
So it's issue 238.
Yes.
If you're looking to have a look.
Yeah.
Issue 238, and Clifford added a long comment. You can probably skip the intro and look.
But that describes what's going on, right? This is probably where my mind went, and I don't want to understand what's going on.
But there is a fundamental thing. There's some fundamental API stuff going on at the surface of this, which is that in the cache writer interface, we documented that it throws bulk cache write exception or cache writer exception and exception. And what we say is, if you throw bulk cache writer exception, the cache will assume that anything that is marked as success succeeded and was written, and everything that's marked as failed didn't. And if you throw any other kind of exception, then it assumes that everything failed.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, that can be weird. The way the code currently behaves makes that weird, because what can happen is, in recovery, it will start writing everything.
What do you call recovery?
In the cache block of Ehcache.
Right. So if we couldn't provide the exclusion at the key level, but we're still trying to write out to the system of record, is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, what ends up happening is I think the essence of the argument here is it correct that if you throw an exception other than bulk cache writer exception, that should be equivalent to throwing bulk cache writer exception with every key in the set?
As a failure?
Yeah.
That's my
understanding.
Not every key. What key set?
So if you look at cache write, the key set passed to it.
Right. So then yes, my answer is yes. That's what I even thought you spelled out when you said what is the behavior in case the writer throws so if write all or delete all throws an exception other than the bulk one that we expect, we consider the entire batch to be a failure, i.e. the batch that was provided to the writer.
Right.
And that part is actually reported consistently. The issue is that that's not necessarily what happens as far as the writer goes.
Yeah, but that's the deal. That's the contract.
Right. But the question,
I cannot tell. So if you don't play by the contract, I can't help you.
So what should the cache do?
In that case, it should probably remove every key from its store, every mapping for the keys that failed from its store. That's why I said this is why I was breaking this.
Right. So that
at the beginning.
That's a change in behavior from current now.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because currently it interprets, if you throw exception, that means everything has failed, to mean, right, I don't need to invalidate because all the writes failed. But it's not really true, is it? That's what I'm saying is, and that's why Clifford is, and what gets thrown to the user is bulk cache writer exception, the second usage of it. Sorry. Saying with all these keys. And the only way of knowing that it's got all the keys because is to actually go in and introspect the exceptions mapped to the keys, and you'll see it's the non-bulk cache writer exception. So one of the things that I guess I don't know if I suggested one way you could sort of distinguish between these two cases would be to set it up so that the bulk so Clifford suggested you could have a different exception type, like a subclass of bulk cache writer exception to throw.
Well, for when? I'm sorry.
For when the cache writer has thrown something that.
Let me share a bit of thing here so we could look.
There's a difference between, basically, it's saying there's a difference between the cache receiving a bulk cache writer exception from the cache writer, and it knowing what succeeded and what failed, and it assuming that everything failed.
Okay, but what is it we're trying to solve by doing that?
Well, there's two things. One is we're saying that the cache should behave differently if it receives a non-bulk cache writer exception from the cache writer. That rather than assuming that the information about what succeeded and what failed is correct, it should go, I don't know what the fuck happened. Bunch of things. Sorry, you'll have to flag it now. Bunch of things things went wrong, and there were a bunch of keys involved, and some of them might have been written, and some of them might not have been. So the only thing we can safely do in the cache is to invalidate everything. Now, if that's true, wouldn't it be nice if that was also flagged to the user?
Why? Why? What do you do with that?
Well, that's part of my contention. We've got things gone to hell in a handbasket here, and we're reporting back a bulk cache writer exception when my personal view is that things are inconsistent and the application basically needs to be restarted, right?
No, that's not true. You don't know that?
We're throwing nobody can tell though.
Well,
right? That's the point. The application would have to go through a very complicated recovery process in order to figure out exactly what state it's in.
No, why? If we invalidated all the cache entries for those.
Right, but it did a bulk. But it doesn't know which things were written and which things weren't.
Yeah.
So oh, you mean the user?
Yes, the user doesn't know what things got written and what things didn't from what's returned to it.
Yeah. Okay, you decided to do it that way.
Okay.
We didn't. If you would have thrown the proper thing, you would know.
Right. And this was the argument. This was the argument I made to Clifford, that I actually think the way we've written the API at the moment is bad, because the Java doc cache writer encourages you to. Well, not encourages you, but doesn't. I don't think it strongly enough discourages you from throwing arbitrary exceptions.
Yeah.
Which it seems they have.
Well, I don't think it's a problem. Because let's be really honest, right? The way that this will be used is 99.9% is going to be around a JDBC connection.
Yep.
That all is encompassed by a begin and.
Yeah, if it throws, it's probably going to roll back.
Which means it's going to be a one or nothing, anyways. And if you're not doing that, probably you're in the smarter part of the boat.
What are you saying about people who use databases?
And then you just do the right thing, because doing the right thing is actually enabled. It's feasible.
But we do so we at least think that we need to change the behavior so that it does invalidate everything.
Yeah, that seems correct. Yes, but this is why I wanted to. So, anyways, but I didn't hear the answer to my initial question, because that's my point of view now that we apparently all summarized. But by throwing another kind of exception, what would be the added value? I'm confused, especially one that extends the bulk one.
It doesn't make it any. Or no, okay, maybe that was a bad idea. What I suggested originally as an idea was that there were three, rather than successes and failures on bulk cache, there was successes, failures, and unknown.
And
what do you do with that?
I actually think. Well,
sorry.
I actually think that what we should be using is a second exception that's a runtime exception. If somebody wants to catch it, then they can, but otherwise their application will, roll out to some point where they'll.
It is a runtime exception at the moment.
If they want to do that, that's the whole point of the resilience strategy.
Right, I'm confused. It doesn't buy anything. Like your standard web app.
You
throw this runtime exception, the user's gonna see a blur.
The resilience
and the world's happily gonna go on.
The resilience, given what's reported out of this, the resilience strategy does not know whether or not the writes taken by the cache writer succeeded or failed.
Right.
All of them are marked as failed. It has no idea whether or not that's true.
But in this case, the resilience strategy wouldn't even be called because it's not a cache failure; it's a writer failure.
True. Yes, it's not.
Yeah, but anyways, I'm still confused. Okay, so wait, Chris, let Clifford finish. No. So I throw this runtime exception, foo with root to 11 exception. And what did I gain? I'm really missing it.
Well, it's my contention that this particular circumstance, right, where you've got a cache and the store, the record, it being in an inconsistent state, and you not having information sitting in front of you to let you know how bad off it is. I mean, you want it needing to clear. At a minimum, clear the store and possibly restart the application to get back to some point where you can run again.
I'm confused. Why do you say that stuff is inconsistent? Are you now saying that actually the thing that failed was the removal of the mapping within the cache?
No, it's not. I think what Clifford's saying is not that the cache is inconsistent. It's the application potentially in an inconsistent state.
Well, you don't know. It needs to be stateful. Right. And if it is stateful, what do? System exit. I'm really confused. It's if the user writes such an app, right? It's outside of our control. There is nothing we can do about that, and he needs to deal with that.
I think here's the thing for me. I think if the fact that the writer's allowed to throw exception is the way of signaling things went badly wrong, who knows what's happened. Is more of an accepted part of the contract, and we expect people because the original intent was, well, cache writer exception is what you should throw, but we'll handle everything else as precautionary because we know that people will always implement the contract badly. Mm-hmm. But if we anticipate that lots of people will throw exception, which we think they will, it feels to me like the ability that we ought to be able to. The argument here is not that doing anything around here makes the cleanup job any easier for the user. The cleanup job is of the same complexity. Either the cache writer is intrinsically doing everything in a single transaction, and because it's JVC and it got rolled back, and you don't care. It's fine. Or it's not, and potentially your transaction that you thought would be atomic because you're relying on the cache to do that got torn in half. Either way, the cleanup's the same. But the thing is, to me, is if exception is going to be more common or encouraged, or even if it's anticipated that lots of people were doing it, shouldn't we make it simpler to tell that things got torn and things are in a bad state?
Yeah.
You said the cache will never provide atomicity with regards to the batch that has been written out, right? You realize that. From many people, I'm actually pretty sure you do realize that.
I think it actually says that someplace.
Yeah, I don't mean atomicity in the in the acid sense, but in a when it comes back, I thought it wrote all these things sense.
Right, but so again, to me, right, all the stuff that we write, the only in syncness that we're trying to provide is the cache with the underlying system of record. How people then deal with their underlying system of record with regards to other states in their application, or even constraints from their application perspective, is not the scope of what we're trying to solve. Right? Yep. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a cache, right? Oh, we're flagged already. Shit hits the fan. You do your best to not expose stale data to the user. That's what we're trying to do. So if an exception is thrown while we wrote, and yes, we're going to report that from the cache perspective, it's that batch that failed, right? You're done. That's the way it is. The user can look at it whichever way he wants. If he wants to do like recovery on his end and go see, all right, so I still have all the new values, right? I have the exception. I have all the keys. He can go to a system of record and do whatever he wants to do. If it's atomic, if it's not, it's inherently racy. But okay, if you want to go to those kind of paradigms, be my guest, but deal with it. There is nothing that the cache really...
No,
it's not a role. It's to me, we're saying, and honestly, if you need the fine grain control, it's there. It's feasible. You just need to write the proper exception being thrown.
Well, I think it's probably good enough at this point to say that any of the keys that you get back out of the bulk cache writer exception need to be invalidated.
Yeah, that we should definitely fix.
Yeah. At the cache level, I really believe that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Worst case, we'll invalidate 10 keys. Apparently, no. In worst case, we invalidate the 10 keys, and only the last one couldn't be written out. Well, you'll get cache misses when you could have gotten cache hits. Yeah. But you don't know, so you played safe. That's what we did with the resilience strategy all the way, and I think that's what we need to stick to, and no more. All the rest, we need to make sure that we don't disable any use cases. But honestly, making the life, we're talking about system of records here that are non-transactional, provides you some kind of atomicity. You don't even know if it's the same than the one you get at, because you could argue about a bunch of things, right? Say you write basically think of a non-transactional store that stores in aggregate in a different form than what you store in your cache, right? There isn't even a one-to-one mapping all of a sudden. You don't know, and it makes it all very complex, yes, but if it's that kind of use case, I don't think any user should expect that we make those use cases any easier. We should just make sure that we don't prohibit certain patterns to deal with certain scenarios in our API. As far as I'm concerned, it's good enough. Enabling the crazy ass thing flag stuff, I don't care, because very, very, very few people are going to do it, and hopefully all the people that do it know what they're doing and will know how to deal with this accordingly. But clearing the entire store of a possible, 20 million entry cache, just because possibly, out of 2 entries, you don't know which one possibly succeeded or not, that seems to be a far stretch to me. And by the way, with the resilience, because we're talking about double failure here, with the resilience strategy, you could actually do it if you wanted to do it. It's all right. All clear on the darn thing. Yeah, sure. Read the resilience strategies that knows about, because Chris looks puzzled.
Well, I guess yes, because it's a double failure. You can do it in response to the cache access exception.
Right. And you just say, all right, scratch it on.
Cool. Yeah, so I think it's worth validating that it definitely clears, so that the.
Yep. And believe it or not, that also addresses the other 2 issues that I raised. 239 and 242, because the issue there is that they don't clear the things out of remove the entries out of the cache.
There is one thing though that slightly puzzles me, and I'm trying to figure it out exactly what it means. Because there is one thing that we cannot, and maybe it's not an issue because maybe the resilience strategy does it all for us and we're all good. How does the user know there actually was a double failure? Because I guess only one wins. If I read this right, the user gets reported that the writer.
If there's a double failure,
the resilience strategy
gets told.
Right. So the resilience strategies knows about the store failure, and the user calling thread knows about the storage.
By default, the default implementation of the resilience strategy we have now will end up throwing back the bulk cache writer exception back to the user.
Yes.
But if you have your own resilience strategy, you could decide to do something different.
Oh, so you're telling me that you're telling me that the resilience strategy today actually also handles the writer?
No.
How does the writer? How does the resilience strategy report the bulk?
Because it's coincident with a cache failure. If a cache failure happens, the resilience strategy is told all of the context information, which means if there was a coincident writer failure,
so it knows.
It's given that. The reason is one of the reasons it's given that is because it has to be given that because it has to rethrow it.
Right.
After it's sorted out of cache.
It knows about the writer exception if there was also a store exception. If there is only a writer exception, it just never knows.
Yeah, if the cache is behaving fine, the resilience strategy says, well, the cache is fine, your writer screwed up, here's the exception. And it just throws straight through.
Right, okay.
You don't get to customize that. But
that makes sense.
It's resilience for the cache, not resilience for the system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. And so the resilience strategy would know about the cache store's failure,
yes,
and the calling thread.
Technically, it doesn't know. It's only called if the store failed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, so in the case of a double failure, basically, I will know, me as a user, if I provide my own resilience strategy, I will know about the store failure, and I can do whatever I want with it. And from the calling code, from the caller, I will know that the writer failed.
Hang on, I'm sharing my screen. I'm about to try to. Screen share. This one.
And it still goes to the possibly inconsistent state if the removal of any of those keys fail. So actually, we could even be dealing with a triple failure. That would be pretty awesome.
Totally. Can you share to all, Chris?
Oh, sorry. No. Because I don't get that button. It says you are screen sharing.
Okay, sweet.
Maybe I can do it. I don't know.
Maybe Alex can do it.
Yes, I can.
Because normally it gives you that button you can click. I didn't get it.
I just did it.
Cool.
I think.
Okay. I see that. Yes, it says you are screen sharing and presenting to everyone. So this is called if the cache fails and the writer succeeds, or there is no writer, and the cache fails. And then this variant called when a cache put all fails due to an underlying store failure and the associated cache writer operation also failed, and you get that signature. So you get given both. What do you do? And so therefore what was it just called? So the robust resilience strategy by default. So we'll do just clean up here, throw F.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you want to do.
But that's also what puzzles me, because now that I'm looking at the result from Clifford and the fact that we go into the cleanup, I'm wondering why the cleanup just doesn't happen.
Because there's a bug, because it's software, and human wrote it, it's buggy.
Quite possibly there's a bug. Oh! Is there a bug?
Who knows? Okay, well, it's busted.
Cleanup.
Don't know. Might be a bug. Probably a bug. Almost certainly a bug. I don't know. Clifford definitely had a test that showed that it wasn't working, so I'm going to assume that.
No, I agree.
So obviously I screwed up somewhere when I wrote this, or somebody else screwed up when they rebased and whatever. I don't know. It's broken. Who broke it is irrelevant at this point.
Right, exactly. It's broken. And the good news is we even agree on how it needs, how the correct
how it should be.
So honestly, as far as I'm concerned, it's all good. Okay.
Cool.
So I guess that was it.
There was something else we wanted to discuss today, right? I can't remember what it was.
Was it?
Well, the other two things that I had were two more issues, and they're
covered.
Yeah, covered by doing the cache invalidation. So
no, there was something else that wasn't Clifford. There was somebody else that said they had something to discuss at this Thursday meeting, and I can't remember who it was.
You mean my convention?
Your convention?
No, isn't that about it? Tim commented on one of my issues. It's 244 if you want to have a look at it.
I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can freely look at this without feeling, oh God, no. Can somebody stop presenting me? Namely Alex. Can you stop presenting
sorry,
me?
I was...
It's disturbing looking at my own
Hide
face.
from broadcast. That's cool. I can hide somebody from the broadcast. I can eject. And I can make stop presenting.
Thank you. Where was it?
It's pull request 44.
Pull request
244, and it's the second set of comments. So the one you see when you scroll to the bottom.
So the one about load in atomics.
No load in atomics.
Yeah. Which is the name of the Boolean flag on the Ehcache service configuration.
And both Tim and Louis found it strange that this flag had a negative name. And my answer to that was, it is my personal convention to say the default value is true. So if you want to change the default, you have to call a negating function. Is that a good convention or not?
Hang on, so what do we think, what's the default behavior going to be?
By default, if you do an Ehcache 3 cache with a loader and a writer, a putifabsent will call the loader if it doesn't see a value in the cache before it decides if it can do the putifabsent.
Can we
GSR 107 mandates the opposite. If you've got a loader in a putifabsent, you don't call into it.
And you're advocating for no negation in Boolean property names. And Ludovic is
the service configuration. So what's exactly to what's exposed to the
and Ludovic is arguing that he wants the default to be false.
No, the default is true, and so he wants the user to have to say Ehcache service configuration, no load in atomics.
Right. He wants someone to. He wants the default value to not have that option switched on, like the default setting.
Yeah. So no load would say false by default.
Yes. Can we?
Oh, okay.
Can I make an alternate suggestion?
And
have it called JSR 107 atomic behavior.
Awesome. Ooh, fancy.
Because that's let's be honest. Nobody really wants to switch on no load in atomics because we think it's a stupid idea. The only reason somebody would want to do it is because they want
to do that because we think. Let me write this one down.
No, you think. You're responsible for your own critiques.
No true clever person would do this because I wouldn't do it. Suffering of the no true Scotsman.
It's not getting better, Chris. Stop digging.
No. So basically, we suspect or we hope that the only reason someone would enable this is because they were running the TCK and wanted it to pass. So call it what it is.
Our wrapper
enable JSR TCK success.
Yes.
Our wrapper will enable that. So if you create a GSR 107 cache,
cool.
You'll get that by default.
Better. I mean, I call it JSR 107 because otherwise you're going to go, what the hell does that do? Go read the JSR 107 spec. JSR 107 behavior in atomics.
I like
and
it.
And then you lose the negation, and Ludovic gets the fact that it's off where the default value of the setting is false.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that way as well, if anyone says, why on earth does this switch exist, it's pretty obvious.
Okay. I kind of like it.
And so if somebody uses 107, gets shooting
That's not going to
in the
happen.
foot, and then goes, "Oh, that's brain dead. I want to change that." Are we going to do something like with the props that you can pass in, and then
You can do it with the template. Can't you do it with the template? Oh no! Hang on.
Wait a sec. How do we expose that?
Ehcache side.
No, yeah, on Ehcache. How is that mode being turned on? It's private API, right? It's not public's.
That?
Yeah.
No, it's not exactly private API.
The Ehcache service configuration.
It's just a service.
What is going on? What is this service?
I need to search now. What class is that on?
Ehcache service configuration.
I don't have that. So it's a new thing.
It's only in my branch. Hasn't been.
What does this service do?
Right. What
It just holds that flag for configuration.
Just stick it on the config.
Just right. Stick it on the config, not on the interfaces. On the real stuff. Honestly, to me, it could be a system prop or whatever to reevaluate with it. I think this should be like very private API, right? I don't think it's something I want to rub in people's face. I don't want any Ehcache user to even know that it exists. And then when he uses 107, we set it the way it needs to be set to please 107. And then that led to my last question, which is, all right, once somebody hurt himself and realized that's not what he wants, how does he turn the proper behavior on without requiring to rewrite his entire application to not use the 107 wrapper?
Yeah, but then we probably have we need to think one level higher. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ludovic. But currently, if you create a cache completely from Ehcache using XML configuration, and then in 107 you do a get cache, you get the cache as it has been configured in Ehcache, including that flag. So for example, the loader will be used in the atomics. Okay, because you're actually just getting a cache through 107, but you're not configuring it. As soon as you configure a cache, either by using a template because you've done some XML things, or because you pass in a mutable configuration or any other of the configuration types you can pass, then you get a cache that will by default have this flag activated so that the loading does not happen. And so as a user, if you realize you shoot yourself in the foot, today we have no option to let you create a cache using the 107 API and not have that behavior.
But that's not the way that I would like to see the behavior work, by the way, right? So I would like to see the behavior works that if the cache manager is created, whether it contains caches or not from the XML config, I don't care. If it's created to the 107 stuff, then it uses the 107 behavior. Starting seeing a mix in there because you configured your thing in XML or in code, I think is a bad idea. I think it should be consistent.
I thought it was totally acceptable to have a 107 implementation that had to have certain settings applied in order to pass TCK.
I'm confused what we're talking about now.
Well, you guys are saying, well, let's automatically apply it when a user uses 107. Yes. What I'm saying is we'll call it JSR 107 atomic behavior, but can't we have it set up so the only time that damn thing is ever set is when we have to pass TCK?
I don't think that's a good idea because if all the other vendors do it by the spec, which I think we all should do, so us included, then it would be crappy again, right? Oh, I want this whole thing to be like you drop it in and it just works. You replace it, you drop foo, you drop Ehcache in, and it just works. And I think the proper way to do this is do it by the spec. So if you have a config file and you go to the pain of making it the Ehcache config file, but the whole thing get bootstrapped through the 107 code, except if you said you want it otherwise, it's going to behave that particular way.
Yeah,
Alex, what does it mean for loaders and writers? Does it mean that we have to accept a 107 loader and a 107 writer in the XML configuration file when you want to use 107?
No. We could, but we don't need to.
But then why would we? So you have a config file, an Ehcache config file.
For the exact point that I just made, Louis, you migrate, right? You're using your application.
No, wait. What I'm saying is you've got a config file.
Mm-hmm.
You load it in Ehcache. The cache behaves in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Then you load it in 107, and the cache behaves differently, and it's the same config file. I find that even worse.
Right,
than the mix between what I created using Ehcache, what I created using 107, and what I just fetched through 107 API.
I don't find it worse. I think worse. I think it's going to be less common that way. So this is why I'm happy to be that one being the one use case that suffers. And again, if you do it that way, at least you're writing code, right? You're migrating from an Ehcache 3 thing to use 107. So you write the code, just pass the freaking property in to say you want the old behavior. And we can document it big time. I have no problem with that, right? Because I really believe this behavior is broken.
Right.
So I think we should go by the spec as much as possible and don't intermix things because you did it in the foo way or in the bar way or in the whatnot.
I'm not. So I still stand by what I said. As far as I'm concerned, I think that the problem of users that use somebody else who adheres to the spec all the time, or by default, or whatever, in this detail, who get surprised when they come to us and we don't by default, is a smaller set of people, and it's a smaller problem than people who will be first-time users of us, use the 107, trick into the behavior, use loaders and writers, and get burnt because it doesn't behave in a sensible way. I think we're talking about very small populations of people here in either case.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I'm firmly of the opinion this is so broken it is useless to someone using loaders and writers with 107. It's completely pointless. It can only be harmful. I don't see how it can be. This is the thing. This is what we said to Brian. Please explain when this is useful. Give me a use case where anyone would want that behavior. And if they don't want that behavior, if nobody can think of a reason why someone would want that behavior, then it's either not going to affect them because they don't trick it, or it's going to break their application because they do trick it and it's not what they want.
I was going to say that probably the population that use both a loader and a writer and CAS operation is also a small population.
Yeah, and why on earth? Like I said, nobody's managed to come up with a decent reason why somebody would want the 107 semantics. So why would we ever give it to anyone? Other than the TCK, which is explicitly testing for it. So if we can get away with making it that it only goes to the TCK, the 107 compliant behavior when it's running in the TCK, fine. From my point of view, I'm perfectly happy to game the system, especially given that we have an open issue at the moment against the spec that we think is bizarre.
Right, and it's the 107. As far as I can tell, this is not something fixable as part of 107.
No, totally.
So,
yeah, but to me,
the 107 wrapper will be that, maybe 108.
But if we can get away with only running in pure 107 mode for the TCK, and they'll let us do that and still claim compliance, which I thought...
I don't think you don't have an entry point. It uses the services and it loads your classes.
You have to. No, it has to be. You have to write your own Bootstrap class to run TCK, so you can make that flip mode switches and put system properties and all sorts. We've talked to Greg about this.
Class.
Yeah, there is one class that you will see if you look at the 2x line. There is a class that sits there for some wicked reason.
Yes, but still, I think it's a bad idea. We should comply fully to the spec.
Yeah, that's my take too.
In the case of the TCK, honestly, for the moment, we just have the exclude list.
Okay, cool. But whatever, I don't really care about the TCK. I want to clear. We have non-agreement on the fundamental thing.
Yes.
I agree with Chris. What the spec says is brain dead. Do I agree with Ludovic? And I think we should do what the spec says. And I think we should only provide an additional switch for people to be able to do the sensible thing, despite what the spec says.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true that I'm trying to defend probably a user that doesn't exist. i.e. the one that will go and read the spec, understand it, and then build something around it, right? So I guess
it's also a way of getting people to say that what the spec mandates makes no sense for them.
It's also weird to do what? Sorry.
No, I mean, I think it's also a good push to have people complain about the spec.
You know what you could do?
Because if they get pushed into it and they have to fix it, then they will realize, and it probably will help them voice their opinions.
How's this? Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
Here's a crazy idea. Can we make it that the default is that this behavior is set to 107 compliant? However we want to enable that. However you want to detect that you want to use that behavior.
In the 107...
107 behavior is to be 107 compliant.
Yeah.
But if you don't explicitly choose that setting by putting it somewhere in a config file, or in a piece of programmatic config, and you're taking the default value, then there's a special logger that every time you do an atomic operation that uses the writer or the loader goes, you're using a writer and a loader with an atomic operation in default 107 compliant mode. This might not be what you want, and we'll do that every time you execute atomic operation. A user that wants that, then it's saying to the user, pick. You want the 107 behavior? Set it explicitly, and this login will go away. You want to suppress the login? Fine. We'll put it in a logger that's its own namespace, and you can just suppress the login if you really want to. You don't want and then you don't want the behavior. Then you switch it the other way, and it goes off.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Because no one goes.
The perfect way to be called by the community dickheads.
Why? Which community? You mean Greg and Brian? Because they don't like the fact that we insult the spec?
The community of users of the JSR 107 API with the Ehcache implementation. Those
they won't see
things, they are smarter than whatever, I don't know.
They won't see it unless they use writers, loaders, and atomic operations.
There is one guy that can claim he's smarter, and that's Chris, because he was on the expert group and he let it slip. So Chris is the smart guy in this group.
So that warning is a lame excuse.
Well, so I don't think anyone would be annoyed by it. Well, as long as you word it carefully.
So, anyways, so there are three things that I hear being discussed, right? So one is what should be the default behavior be for the 107 stuff, compliant or not. Two,
I think it should be spec compliant.
Okay.
I think it should pass TCK.
Two is, should this behavior be compliant wherever the config comes from? The cache comes from?
Mm-hmm.
Three, what do we do with the whole spec compliant way in order to avoid too much bloodshed?
I think, like you said, I agree with you. We need to be spec compliant. Period. So I thought that having mixed, so being able to access an Ehcache 3 flavored cache when you just get it and not create it was also a good idea, but that seems not to be the case. So
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it becomes very crappy. I think it should be consistent for both things.
So
and I understand that if you migrate from Ehcache 3 API to JSR 107, that the semantic of the whole thing will change on your cache, but I think it's fine because it's only a matter of config, so I don't see that as a problem. That's my take. You're writing your entire application, right, to use your entire application. All the parts of your application are using a cache, you're rewriting it to use a different API. Don't tell me it's a problem all of a sudden to flip a bit in the configuration file somewhere. I think this is... I will not buy this argument.
No, but then if we do that, it means that suddenly having the capability of flipping that
bit
needs to be exposed to the user.
Yes.
versus the private way you wanted initially.
No, I want the private way on Ehcache 3 API. In the 107 world, it's fine. I don't want an Ehcache 3 user to have this method that says set 107 compliant atomic method behavior.
Okay. So
that's what I don't want.
You'll get it in the XML.
No, you can do it in the 107 module of the XML.
No, because then it forces, if you do that, then it forces to have a 107 entry for each cache you have in your ehcache.xml.
Not necessarily.
Remember,
now you're back again arguing for the mixed mode.
And I'm not arguing for the mixed mode. I'm explaining to you what getting rid of the mixed mode requires.
No, just put the darn thing in the 107 thing that says use 107 atomic loader behavior true false, and you could add another one that says for the programmatic ones as well for the XML one if you want to split them. But I wouldn't split them. To me, it would be a one mode for all the caches in this cache manager.
Okay. So it becomes a Jcache defaults attribute or element. That's the Jcache
for configuration, right? In XML. Ehcache 107 extension. So if you open the XSD, you can. So we have. What do we have in there? We have Is that it? Crap, I'm lost. Why can I not read this whole thing? Defaults. There. Add an attribute to defaults. So the one single element in there. Defaults. 107 compliant atomic loader behavior defaults to false. Oh, to true. Sorry. You can, or whichever way you guys want to have it. Negative or I don't care. It's adding one attribute, and you're done. That's one way of setting it. I would also make it through the properties, as I said. I think I would do both. So that you don't need to, because you don't need to put this 107 thing in your XML at all. So you could do it to a property in your props that you pass in when you create your cache manager.
And so indeed, the only thing you have to do for reverting back to the Ehcache 3 behavior is to add that service Jcache defaults section with that entry. Okay.
Either that or pass it inside a given property within the property set that you pass when you create a cache manager. And I think the file should take precedence over the properties. Because that, well, or not, I don't know.
Somebody. About the bizarre use case if you want to migrate from the JSR 107 API to the Ehcache 3 API.
And you want to keep this brain dead thing. I'm arguing this doesn't exist. And if you really need to, do a hard cast somewhere and set the thing the same way as we do it. So it's still possible. But what I don't want is like sane Ehcache 3 users having to deal with nonsense that we only put in there while waiting for the 2x line of the Jcache API, right? Because it's going to be addressed. So I don't want to pollute our API, like our public API, with that nonsense. That's very dear to me.
All right, and if we really end up in the worst case scenario where they don't change their mind and we get a customer with big deep pockets that really want to do that, eventually we'll do something for them at that time.
I am almost 100% convinced we will never find a customer that wants to do that. That we cannot persuade that they actually don't want to do that and they actually want what we want to. That they want the behavior that we want to give them. I mean, like I said, no one's been able to find a reasonable use case for this thing.
No, think of all.
Particularly when you can't pin it.
Yeah, exactly.
Membership of the cache means nothing in that context, so predicating on the cache membership means nothing.
And in that case, you don't even care, because if you can pin, it's not going to use the loader. It's going to be there. It's going to do it. In the case of absence, it will hit.
It's like a CPU having an instruction to jump if the temperature's modulo 2 is 0. Sorry, modulo 1. You know what I mean? You could have modulo 2 too. But the only useful thing you can do with that is random number generator. So put if absent, by the only use case I can think of, put if on a cache, really bad random number generator. Derived from the eviction algorithm sampling stuff. Potentially a really bad random number generator. I can't think what else is good for.
No, I don't think it's good for anything, really. But anyways,
unless you accept the conflation that some people seem to believe in of caches with stores, where yes, if the cache doesn't evict and is a store, then potentially it can do.
Why
some
does
stuff
it have a writer and why does it have a loader? In which case,
precisely.
So, no, this is Apparently, I've got this discussion pending, based on somebody once saying that. Yeah, anyways. The cache to cache, it's not any of the.
Coincidentally, we have 4 minutes left, so hopefully nobody want to talk about anything else.
So we have to create an issue around the handling of XML configuration in the 107 world following
this discussion.
If we want that, right? Because, I mean,
what do
I'm
you
not
mean?
even arguing we want the XML flag. To me, the property...
No, wait, Alex. Before even the XML flag, the discussion we had about the fact that currently, when you load the configuration file, it will not apply any of the 107 mandatory things to existing caches. It will only work if you create a cache through a template, passing in a configuration. But if you just do get cache and get a cache, for the moment, it's absolutely 107 obnoxious. So and I think we want it in the XML.
Yeah, I don't care so much, to be honest. That's why I U-turned, because I said the cool bit about the XML is that you don't need to recompile, but you don't need for properties neither, right? Just load the properties from a properties file like it's meant to be, and you're good to go. But I understand that it's kind of nice to have all your config that's, since the spec doesn't mandate any format for this XML file, or whatever actually for this configuration file, you're most probably gonna write one anyways. So you might just have and like from scratch, right? Ehcache 3.1, you may just as well have all your cache settings in one place. So I certainly can buy into that.
Yeah.
And maybe that argues against the property, for instance, and let's not put the property in and force people to use the XML stuff. When you think about it, it makes sense again, because we don't have any ways of configuring the capacity through properties. And again, I fail to see what's the use case for a cache that doesn't have a capacity constraint.
We don't yet have an Ehcache 107 extended configuration class that allows you to configure anything, not GSR 107 spec, programmatically.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a custom type that extends mutable configuration.
No, but we'll probably have that, right? So I mean.
Yes, but then at that point, we'll probably then have that flag and the capacity and these things on it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we shouldn't need the system prop. We should have that on the provider-specific configuration classes and on the XML.
Alex.
Yeah.
I know we've got 1 minute. On a similar theme, 303 on GitHub, the actual issue that we opened against the put if absent contract in the spec. What is Brian proposing? Is he just proposing clarifying the exact behavior so that people don't accidentally use it? His last comment.
Can you give me the issue? 303, right?
303.
What is that again?
This is 303 on the JSR 107 spec.
Oh, okay.
Project for those that are trying to follow along. Because so Brian basically says, oh, well, you could use an entry process to do this, and yeah, it's a bit weird, and that forces cache loaders and cache writers to be coordinated. Well, we don't think there's any reason why they wouldn't be coordinated. But anyway, that's a secondary question. blah, 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 blah. And then he says his last comment, I think we should add necessary clarifications around this, especially to allow keeping cache loaders, cache writers in sync. Thoughts? Question mark. Perhaps we can do this. What exactly is he proposing doing in a maintenance release? Because later on he adds it to the 1.1 milestone.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, I'm seeing that now,
but,
actually.
Yeah, but there's nothing happened in the last 27 days. I don't quite know what's going on. Which is kind of sad, considering I'm still technically in the expert group, but that's probably more a reflection on me than it is on... Plus, 27 days is, like, takes you back. I mean, the holiday period was in the gap, so... Maybe that's just why nothing's happened. Let's have a look and see what else is in the 1.1. The other things that are in the 1.1 milestone look like maintenance stuff, so... Maybe they're planning on...
Well, I guess you could add... so what is 101 then? 101 was just...
It's a room you don't want to go to.
All right. So, okay, cool. What can I say? Yeah, I don't know. What can be done, really? It's...
I mean, I'd like to think that he's planning on fixing the spec to spec it to behave the way we want it to behave, but I don't believe he can do that. I think it's too much of a change in a maintenance release.
Yeah, I don't think so. Maybe...
So I suspect what he's proposing is clarifying the Java doc, which is better than nothing, because it might dissuade some people from using it.
Right, but especially to allow keeping cache loaders and cache writers in sync. That bit throws me off. I
know. Thoughts? I know. Maybe I should put some thoughts down. But...
Well, man, maybe... I don't see how you would do that in like... I don't see how you would do that.
You can't do it in the maintenance release, because then you've got this horrible problem that... Because there's this whole rule about the fact that anyone can... If you pass against one version of TCK, basically, you're only allowed to do you're only allowed to do loosenings, I think. Is my understanding, because basically if someone passes a release version of TCK, they can claim compliance. So if you change something this fundamentally, it causes great confusion, because suddenly someone can claim to be compliant, but they don't behave the way that the spec says they should.
No, I don't see how you would fix that, but maybe I'm lacking imagination. Yeah, maybe ask. Or maybe, this 1.1 is just maybe they don't have a plan, but they believe if it's fixable, they'd like to see it fixed. So maybe it was just postponed, so it doesn't fall through the cracks. I don't know.
I'll leave an open tab and see how motivated I become.
Good.
Cool. Are we done?
I guess.
I get on past the ending time. Did we have any people watching?
We have James.
Right now,
James watching.
Right now it's a 0.
Maybe he was watching and had to go to a meeting. I'm sure lots of people will watch it on YouTube.
On that thought.